Hello everybody and welcome to Bright Weird. Interesting subject this one because this is the one about ectoplasm. Ectoplasm. Physiospritual force or substance that sits between or bridges the physical and spiritual realms. A phenomenon that is able to transverse the lower and higher dimensions of both consciousness and reality. If you've seen the film Ghostbusters, you've probably heard about the substance known as ectoplasm. The concept of ectoplasm has played the role in popular culture, particularly in those horror movies and literature. The idea of ectoplasm being a supernatural substance that could manifest physical objects or even a ghostly form has been used in many films, such as I previously mentioned, Ghostbusters, but also others such as Poltergeist, and in literature. Ectoplasm was often used as a plot device in gothic and horror stories, such as those by H.P. Lovecraft. So, what is ectoplasm? Ectoplasm is a term used in paranormal and spiritual circles to refer to a type of substance that is believed to emanate from the body of a medium during a seance or other spiritual practice. It is said to be a physical manifestation of psychic energy or spiritual entities and typically appears as a cloudy or misty substance. Ectoplasm was first introduced by Charles Richet, a French psychologist who coined the term in the late 19th century. The phenomenon also gained popularity during the spiritualist movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Mediums claimed they could produce ectoplasm during seances as a physical manifestation of spiritual energy. So, how does it manifest? It is said to work thus. A seance or group form a circle, normally around a small table, and a medium or sensitive then falls into a particular state of consciousness and attempts to communicate with non-physical spiritual entities. The spirit entity enters the circle and manipulates microscopic particles in the nervous systems of the group. The medium or sensitive becomes the focus of all this nervous system energy, and it builds in the medium as a spiritual capacitance and then explodes out again into the group, and then again flows back through the sitters until it again reaches the medium. This energy builds again stronger until it is able to project out as a physical force, usually in the form of a rod or a lever or something able to physically react with or move a physical object. This physical manifestation of a spiritual force is ectoplasm. Ectoplasm, if seen, was generally described as a viscous white or colourless substance that could flow out of a medium or psychic's nose, mouth, ears, or other bodily orifices, or from cuts in the skin. Ectoplasm was also depicted in early photographs of mediums as a mist or cloud of material that would partially or completely envelop the medium during the seance. There have been many accounts of ectoplasm being used to produce paranormal phenomena, such as levitation, materialization of spirits, and telekinetic effects. Examples of the use of ectoplasm. Ectoplasm is said to be drawn from the sitters and mediums and part controlled by a spiritual entity. An experienced medium may be able to manipulate ectoplasm to paint the face of a spirit, to give it form in the material realm, in a similar way to painting the face of the Invisible Man with makeup. Ectoplasm, as previously stated, can also be used to form rods or connectors to move things at a distance in the material world, acting through the life force of the medium and again controlled by the spiritual entity. One of the things that it can move is body parts of the sitters, which can be quite unnerving to the unsuspecting skeptic, and this is how it might go down. During a seance, Bob the skeptic intentionally bangs the table and smiles, and the whole group look at him with disdain. However, if the table bumps and all of the sitters look at Bob and say, "Was that you again, Bob?" and Bob looks back at them terrified and says, "Yes," then that was probably an ectoplasmic force being controlled by the spirit, not particularly impressed with the presence of Bob the skeptic. It's all real, and it's all in your head. And as Lon Milo DuQuette says, you just don't know how big your head really is. Let's talk about the scientific community. They've discounted the existence of ectoplasm due to what they say is the lack of evidence and the many instances of fraud and deception that have been uncovered in connection with it. The belief in ectoplasm reached its height in the early 20th century when many prominent individuals in the spiritualist movement, such as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Sir Oliver Lodge, accepted ectoplasm as a genuine phenomenon. Several mediums claimed to be able to produce ectoplasm, including the famous Mina Crandon, also known as Marjorie, who was investigated by the American Society for Psychical Research in the 1920s. Many of these claims were later exposed as fraudulent for reasons I will explain shortly. Magicians and skeptics such as Harry Houdini and Harry Price conducted investigations and found that ectoplasm was often nothing more than cheesecloth, gauze, or other materials hidden on the medium's body or in props. Some mediums were even found to have swallowed and regurgitated the material during the seance. Despite these revelations, some still believe in the existence of ectoplasm and argue that the genuine phenomenon has been obscured by these fraudulent mediums and unscrupulous investigators. Rejecting the skeptics. I believe that it is extremely difficult to scientifically prove or record spiritual phenomena, particularly with the crude man-made nonsense such as cameras. This is because most of what transpires happens in the minds of those sitting with the medium, a shared and very real psychic experience. As the camera is not alive, has no mind, and is separate from the circle, it necessarily follows that it cannot record anything spiritual. Of the cases of fraud, I'm sure that there are many that are the work of charlatans and theatre acts, but some may be the work of real mediums and spiritualists, desperately trying to portray something they have actually seen and experienced in a previous seance. A small act of dishonesty that in many cases may have destroyed their reputation. Madame Blavatsky is well known to have been caught faking phenomena, and she was thus branded a fraud. Spiritually, I'm quite confident she was no fraud. You see, regarding the link, it doesn't always work, and renowned mediums throughout the ages have been put under a certain amount of pressure to perform, thus leading them to slightly dishonest practices to please the paying or the great and the good in attendance. Despite all of this, overall, ectoplasm remains an interesting and controversial topic in the realm of paranormal studies and in the history of spiritualism. As a closing note, I wonder if the chaps at CERN have been scratching their large foreheads when confronted with evidence of ectoplasm. Perhaps they'll call it dark matter and record its value in giga-electron volts.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this little insight into ectoplasm. I'm Steve, this has been Bright Weird. Thanks for watching.